It all started that morning when I found her rings on the kitchen table. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee, savoring the quiet moments before the day began, when I noticed them. Two delicate bands glinting in the early sunlight. My heart sank, and an inexplicable sense of dread washed over me. My wife, Julia, worked at the local farmer's market. She sold fresh fruits and vegetables, and she loved her job. We'd been married for 10 years, and I always thought our life was solid, built on a foundation of trust and shared dreams. But those rings, they felt like a harbinger of something I wasn't ready to face. Julia had recently struck up a friendship with Michael, a charismatic farmer who supplied her with some of the best produce. I'd heard her talk about him in passing, always with a smile on her face. Michael this, Michael that. He was charming, good-looking, and from what I gathered, quite the storyteller. But I never suspected there was more to their relationship than just business. One Saturday, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to visit the market, to see Julia in her element. When I arrived, I saw her laughing with Michael. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. My gut twisted, but I pushed the feeling aside. She was happy, and that was what mattered, right? Lately, Julia had been staying late at the market, often coming home well after dark. She said there was always so much to prepare for the next day. I believed her because why wouldn't I? She was my wife, and I trusted her completely. But then, there was that phone call. One night, while Julia was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, and there was a message from Michael. It was nothing explicit, just a simple, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." But it felt like a punch to the gut. My hands shook as I put the phone back down, trying to convince myself it was innocent. The late nights continued, and our evenings together became increasingly rare. I started to notice how often she would mention Michael, how her eyes would light up when she talked about the market. Something inside me snapped, and I knew I needed to know the truth. So I started watching them. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. I saw the way they interacted, the stolen glances, the touches that lingered just a bit too long. I knew then that my worst fears were coming true. One night I confronted Julia. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked her outright about Michael. The look in her eyes was all the confirmation I needed. She tried to lie, but eventually the truth came pouring out. She admitted everything. The late nights, the secret meetings, the affair that had been going on right under my nose. I felt my world collapse around me. The foundation of our life together, the trust I thought we had, it was all a lie. And those rings on the kitchen table? They were a symbol of everything we'd lost. After Julia's confession, everything changed. Our home, once filled with warmth and laughter, became a cold, silent place. I couldn't look at her without feeling a deep sense of betrayal. I spent more time at work, trying to escape the reality of what had happened. Julia continued to work at the farmer's market, but the joy she once had for it seemed to have dimmed. She tried to make amends, to repair the damage she had done, but the wound was too fresh. Trust, once shattered, is not easily rebuilt. I remember one evening vividly. I came home from work, exhausted and numb. Julia was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, something she hadn't done in weeks. The aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, a stark contrast to the bitterness that lingered between us. "Hey," she said softly as I entered the room. I nodded, avoiding her gaze. We sat down to eat in silence. I could see the effort she was putting in, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. "Can we talk?" Julia finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. "About what?" I replied, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. "About us, about everything. I want to explain." "I don't need explanations, Julia. I need to understand why. Why him? Why now?" I interrupted, my frustration bubbling over. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know. I was lonely, and he made me feel wanted. I never meant for it to go this far." Her words cut deep. I pushed my plate away, no longer hungry. "Lonely? We've been married for 10 years, Julia. We built a life together. How could you just throw that away?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Sorry." The words seemed so inadequate, so hollow. I got up and left the table, retreating to the solace of our bedroom. I could hear her sobbing, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her, not when I was drowning in my own pain. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between us grew. Julia tried to bridge the gap, but I kept her at arm's length. The market, once her sanctuary, became a source of tension. I couldn't stand the thought of her being there, seeing Michael every day. One morning, I decided to follow her. I needed to see for myself if she was truly trying to move on, or if she was still tangled in her web of lies. I parked a few blocks away from the market and watched from a distance. Julia was there, as usual, setting up her stall. Michael arrived shortly after, his truck loaded with fresh produce. I watched as they interacted, my heart pounding in my chest. They spoke briefly, maintaining a professional distance, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something between them. I decided to confront Michael. I walked up to him as he was unloading crates of tomatoes. "Michael," I called out. He turned, surprised to see me. "Hey, Jack," he greeted me with a forced smile. "What brings you here?" "We need to talk," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. He nodded, setting the crate down. We moved away from the market stalls, finding a quiet spot behind one of the storage sheds. "Look, I know what's been going on between you and Julia," I began, trying to keep my emotions in check. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I never meant to hurt you, Jack. It just happened." "Just happened?" I repeated, anger flaring. "You knew she was married. You knew we had a life together." "I know, and I'm sorry. It's over now, I swear. Julia and we ended it." I studied his face, searching for any sign of deceit. He seemed sincere, but the damage was done. "I don't know if I can ever forgive either of you," I admitted, "but I need to know it's truly over." "It is," Michael assured me. "I won't come between you two anymore. You have my word." I walked away, feeling a mix of relief and unresolved anger. Confronting Michael had given me some closure, but the path to healing with Julia was still uncertain. The road ahead was long, and I didn't know if we could ever find our way back to each other. The confrontation with Michael marked a turning point. I'd faced him, and I believed his words, but the healing process was only beginning. Julia and I were still strangers in our own home, tiptoeing around each other, each trying to navigate the broken pieces of our marriage. I decided to seek counseling. I suggested it to Julia, and to my surprise, she agreed without hesitation. We found a therapist who specialized in couples dealing with infidelity, and we scheduled our first session. Walking into the therapist's office, I felt a mixture of hope and skepticism. Could talking really mend what had been shattered? Could we ever regain the trust we once had? Dr. Miller, our therapist, welcomed us warmly. She had a calm, reassuring presence that put me slightly at ease. We sat down and she encouraged us to share our feelings openly, without judgment. "Why don't we start with you, Jack?" Dr. Miller suggested. "How have you been feeling since you found out about the affair?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Angry, betrayed, like everything I thought I knew about our life was a lie. Julia flinched at my words, but she remained silent, waiting for her turn. Dr. Miller nodded. "Those feelings are completely valid. And Julia, how about you? How have you been coping?" Julia's voice was barely above a whisper. "Guilty. Ashamed. I know I hurt Jack deeply, and I don't know how to make it right." The sessions were intense. We delved into our past, our fears, our unmet needs. It was exhausting, but it also felt like a necessary purge, an unburdening of all the hidden pains and resentments we'd carried for years. One evening, after a particularly draining session, Julia and I sat in our living room, the silence between us less oppressive than it had been in weeks. "Do you think we'll ever get past this?" Julia asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I want to try. For us. For everything we've built together." Her eyes filled with tears. "I want that too, Jack. I love you. I never stopped loving you." Hearing those words, I felt a glimmer of hope. Love was still there, buried beneath the hurt and betrayal. Maybe, just maybe, it could be our guiding light through this darkness. We began to spend more time together, making a conscious effort to reconnect. We cooked dinner together, went for walks, and even revisited some of our old favorite spots. It was awkward at first, but gradually we started to find our rhythm again. One Saturday, we decided to take a trip to the countryside, far away from the market and all the painful memories it held. We drove in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with the promise of new beginnings. We arrived at a quaint little bed and breakfast nestled among rolling hills. The air was fresh and the scenery was breathtaking. It felt like a world away from our troubles. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Julia took my hand. "I'm so sorry for everything, Jack. I know it's going to take time, but I'm committed to making this work." I squeezed her hand, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm willing to try, Julia, one day at a time." The journey to forgiveness wasn't easy. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but we kept moving forward. Counseling helped us communicate better, to understand each other's perspectives. We learned to be patient, to give each other space when needed, but also to come together and support one another. Months passed, and slowly, the wounds began to heal. Trust, once shattered, was being rebuilt, brick by brick. It was a fragile thing, but it was there, growing stronger with each passing day. Julia and I found ourselves laughing again, rediscovering the joy that had brought us together in the first place. We knew we still had a long way to go, but we were on the right path. Together, we were reclaiming our life, our love, and our future. Despite our progress, the road to recovery was fraught with challenges. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended, and there were days when doubt and fear crept back in. But we were determined to keep moving forward, to rebuild what had been shattered. One of the hardest parts was reestablishing a sense of normalcy. Our routines had changed so much, and we needed to find new ways to connect. Julia decided to take a break from the farmer's market, recognizing that her continued presence there was a constant reminder of her betrayal. She found a temporary job at a local grocery store, a change that helped both of us begin to heal. One evening, we sat on the couch, a rare moment of calm after a busy day. Julia turned to me, her eyes filled with sincerity. "I've been thinking a lot about how we can rebuild trust," she said. "I want us to be completely honest with each other, about everything. No more secrets." I nodded, appreciating her willingness to be open. "I agree. I think it's the only way we can truly move forward." We started small, sharing our daily experiences, our thoughts, and our feelings. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of awkwardness and discomfort. But it felt good to be honest, to be vulnerable with each other again. One weekend, we decided to tackle a project together, something to symbolize our new beginning. We chose to renovate our kitchen, a space that had always been the heart of our home. We spent hours picking out new tiles, cabinets, and appliances, each decision made together, each step a small act of rebuilding. As we worked side by side, I began to see glimpses of the partnership we once had. We laughed at our mistakes, celebrated our progress, and slowly, the kitchen began to transform, just like our relationship. During one of our counseling sessions, Dr. Miller suggested an exercise to help us reconnect on a deeper level. She asked us to write letters to each other, expressing our feelings, our hopes, and our fears. I spent hours crafting my letter, pouring my heart onto the page. When I finally handed it to Julia, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. She did the same, and we agreed to read them separately, then come together to discuss them. That evening, I sat alone in our bedroom, Julia's letter in my hands. I took a deep breath and began to read. "Dear Jack, I know I've hurt you deeply, and there are no words to fully express my regret. But I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I want to rebuild the trust we've lost, to be the wife you deserve. You've always been my rock, my safe haven. And I took that for granted. I promised to be honest, to be open, and to work every day to earn your trust back. I love you more than words can say, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to heal our marriage. Yours always, Julia." Tears filled my eyes as I read her words. They were raw, sincere, and filled with the love I knew was still there, beneath all the pain. I picked up my letter and walked to the living room, where Julia was waiting. We sat down, and I handed her my letter. She read it silently, her eyes brimming with tears. When she finished, she looked up at me, and I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered, "for your honesty and for giving us a chance." We talked for hours that night, sharing our fears and our dreams, our hopes for the future. It was a turning point, a moment of profound connection that brought us closer than we had been in months. Rebuilding trust was a slow process, but with each passing day, we grew stronger. We learned to communicate better, to listen without judgment, and to support each other through the ups and downs. One evening, as we sat in our newly renovated kitchen, Julia took my hand. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said, a smile playing on her lips. We have, I agreed, squeezing her hand. And I'm proud of us, of how far we've come. Looking into her eyes, I saw the woman I fell in love with all those years ago. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew we would face it together, one step at a time, rebuilding our life and our love on a foundation stronger than before. Life seemed to be getting back on track. Julia and I were finding our rhythm again, and the wounds, though still present, were slowly healing. But as with any journey of recovery, there were tests along the way, moments that threatened to undo all the progress we had made. One such moment came when Julia received an unexpected call from the market. The owner was desperate. Their main supplier had backed out, and they needed someone reliable to step in. Julia had always been passionate about the market, and I could see the conflict in her eyes as she explained the situation to me. "I don't want to jeopardize what we've rebuilt," she said, her voice trembling, "but they really need my help, Jack." I took a deep breath, weighing my own insecurities against her passion. "Do you want to go back?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded slowly. "I think I do, but only if you're okay with it. I don't want to do anything that might hurt us again." I looked into her eyes and saw her sincerity. This was another step in rebuilding trust, another test of our resilience. "I trust you, Julia," I said finally. "If you want to go back, then I support you." Julia returned to the market with a new sense of purpose. She assured me that she had set clear boundaries with Michael, and that their interactions would be strictly professional. I believed her, but the fear of the past repeating itself lingered in the back of my mind. The first few weeks were challenging. I couldn't help but feel anxious every time she left for work, but Julia was patient, understanding my fears and reassuring me with her actions. She called me during breaks, kept me informed about her day, and made sure to spend quality time with me every evening. One Saturday, I decided to visit the market again, this time not out of suspicion, but to support Julia. When I arrived, I saw her in her element, interacting with customers, her face alight with passion and joy. Michael was there too, but as promised, their interaction was strictly businesslike. Julia spotted me and waved, a genuine smile spreading across her face. I walked over to her stall, and she greeted me with a warm hug. "Thank you for coming," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I wanted to see you in action," I replied, feeling a sense of pride and relief. We spent the day together at the market, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. I realized that this was another step towards healing, another way to rebuild the trust that had been broken. However, life had more challenges in store for us. One evening, Julia received a message from Michael. He wanted to meet, to apologize for his part in the affair, and to assure her that he respected the boundaries she had set. Julia showed me the message immediately, her face pale with worry. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I appreciated her transparency, her willingness to involve me in the decision. "Do you think meeting him would bring closure?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I feel like I need to hear him out, for my own peace of mind." We discussed it at length, and eventually, I agreed. "All right," I said, "but I want to be there too, as a witness to the conversation." Julia nodded, relieved. We arranged to meet Michael at a local coffee shop. The atmosphere was tense, but I knew this was a necessary step. When Michael arrived, he looked genuinely remorseful. He greeted us both and sat down, his eyes fixed on the table. "I'm sorry," he began. "I never meant to come between you two. What happened was a mistake, and I regret it deeply." Julia listened, her expression unreadable. "I appreciate your apology, Michael," she said finally, "but this can't change what happened. We're trying to move on, and I need to know that you'll respect our boundaries." "I will," Michael assured her. "I respect what you're trying to rebuild, and I won't interfere again." As we left the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This meeting had brought a sense of closure, a final chapter in a painful story. Julia and I walked home hand in hand, both of us feeling a renewed sense of hope. The path to recovery was never linear, but each challenge we faced together made us stronger. Trust was being rebuilt, not just through words, but through actions. We were learning to navigate our fears, to support each other, and to embrace the future with a resilience we hadn't known we possessed. Together we were proving that love, even when tested, could endure and grow stronger. Our journey toward healing continued, and as the months passed, we found ourselves growing closer than ever before. The trust we had painstakingly rebuilt was fragile but strong, like a delicate flower blossoming after a harsh winter. It was during this time that we received an invitation that would test our progress in a new way: a family reunion. Julia's family had always been close-knit, and annual reunions were a cherished tradition. This year, the reunion was particularly special, as it marked her parents' 40th wedding anniversary. Julia was eager to go, but I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach at the thought of facing her family, knowing they were aware of our troubles. "Do you think we should go?" Julia asked one evening as we sat together in the living room, the invitation open on her lap. I took a deep breath considering my response. "I think it could be good for us, a chance to show them how far we've come, but it's going to be hard." Julia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I know, but I want to face it together. We've been through so much, and I believe we can handle this too." We decided to go, preparing ourselves for the inevitable questions and concerned looks from family members. The reunion was held at Julia's parents' house, a large, welcoming home surrounded by lush gardens. As we arrived, I could see Julia's nervousness mirrored in my own eyes. The first few hours were filled with polite conversation and awkward silences. Julia's parents, Mark and Susan, greeted us warmly, but there was an underlying tension that was hard to ignore. They had always been supportive of our marriage, and I knew they had been hurt by the news of our struggles. At dinner, the atmosphere was tense as we all gathered around the long dining table. The room was filled with laughter and chatter, but there was a noticeable strain whenever someone addressed Julia or me directly. I could see the questions in their eyes, the concern they were too polite to voice. After the meal, as everyone was mingling in the garden, Mark approached me. He was a tall, stern man with a heart of gold, and I respected him immensely. "Jack, can we talk?" he asked, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the garden. "Of course," I replied, following him. We stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of laughter and conversation fading into the background. "I know it's been a tough year for you and Julia," Mark began, his voice gentle but firm. "Susan and I have been worried, but we also believe in your commitment to each other." I nodded, appreciating his honesty. "It's been incredibly difficult, but we're working through it. We've come a long way, and I'm committed to making this work." Mark studied my face for a moment before speaking again. "I can see that you're both trying, and that means a lot to us. Julia is our daughter, and we want her to be happy. If she's chosen to stay and work things out with you, then we support that decision, but know that we're here for both of you, no matter what." "Thank you, Mark," I said sincerely. "Your support means everything to us." As the evening wore on, Julia and I found ourselves more at ease. The initial tension began to dissipate, replaced by genuine warmth and support from her family. We shared stories, laughed together, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of belonging. Later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Julia turned to me. "Thank you for coming with me, Jack. It means a lot." I smiled, pulling her into a hug. "We're in this together, remember? Besides, it wasn't as bad as I feared." Julia chuckled softly. "No, it wasn't. I think it was good for us. Another step forward." The reunion proved to be a healing experience for both of us. It reminded us of the support we had from those who cared about us and reinforced our commitment to each other. We left the next day feeling closer and more determined to continue our journey together. Back at home, we resumed our routines, but something had shifted. The support and acceptance from Julia's family had strengthened our resolve. We were no longer just rebuilding trust, we were building a future, one filled with hope and resilience. As the days turned into weeks, we continued to grow stronger. Each challenge we faced, each step we took, brought us closer together. We learned that love, true and enduring, could survive even the darkest of times. Julia and I were not just surviving, we were thriving. And as we looked toward the future, we knew that whatever came our way, we would face it together, hand in hand, with a love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. With the family reunion behind us, Julia and I settled into a new rhythm. The support and encouragement from her family had given us a fresh perspective and renewed determination to nurture our relationship. It was time to rediscover the love that had brought us together in the first place. One evening, Julia surprised me with an idea. "I think we need a getaway," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Just the two of us, away from everything. What do you think? I smiled, the thought of a break from our daily routine sounding incredibly appealing. I think that's a great idea. Where do you want to go? I've been looking at some cabins by the lake, she replied, showing me a website on her phone. It's peaceful, secluded, and perfect for us to reconnect. We booked a cozy cabin nestled in the woods by a serene lake, a few hours' drive from our home. The anticipation of the trip filled us both with excitement and a sense of hope. We packed our bags and set off early one Saturday morning, the drive filled with light-hearted conversation and laughter. When we arrived, the sight of the cabin took my breath away. It was perfect, rustic yet comfortable, surrounded by towering trees and overlooking the calm blue waters of the lake. We spent the first afternoon exploring the area, walking hand in hand along the shoreline, the stress and strain of the past months melting away. That evening, we sat by the fireplace, the warmth and crackling of the fire creating a cozy atmosphere. Julia had prepared a simple but delicious dinner, and we enjoyed it with a bottle of wine, savoring each moment. "Do you remember our first date?" Julia asked, her eyes twinkling with nostalgia. I chuckled, nodding. "How could I forget? You spilled your drink all over me, and I was too nervous to notice until you apologized profusely." She laughed, the sound filling the cabin with a joyful melody. "I was so embarrassed, but you just smiled and made a joke about starting off on the right foot." We spent the evening reminiscing about our early days together, the memories flooding back and reminding us of the deep bond we shared. It was a beautiful, heartfelt conversation that brought us closer, reigniting the spark that had dimmed over the past year. The next morning, we decided to go hiking on one of the nearby trails. The weather was perfect, with the sun shining brightly and a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. As we walked, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future, the conversation flowing easily. At one point, we reached a clearing with a breathtaking view of the lake below. We sat down on a large rock, taking in the scenery and the peacefulness of the moment. "I've missed this," Julia said softly, resting her head on my shoulder. "Just being together, without any worries or distractions." "Me too," I replied, wrapping my arm around her. "This feels right, like we're finding our way back to each other." As the days passed, we continued to explore the area, enjoying each other's company and the tranquility of the lake. We went fishing, paddled a canoe, and spent lazy afternoons reading by the water. Each moment was a step toward rediscovering the love we had once taken for granted. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Julia and I sat on the porch of the cabin, wrapped in a blanket. The beauty of the scene and the closeness we felt were almost overwhelming. "Jack," Julia said, her voice filled with emotion, "I want to thank you for forgiving me, for giving us another chance. I love you more than words can say." I turned to her, my heart full. "I love you too, Julia, and I'm grateful for you, for us, for everything we've been through. It's made us stronger." We shared a tender kiss, the promise of a future built on love and resilience binding us together. In that moment, I knew we were on the right path, that we had rediscovered the love that had always been there, waiting to be rekindled. As our getaway came to an end, we returned home with renewed energy and a deeper connection. The challenges we had faced had not broken us. They had strengthened our bond and reminded us of the importance of nurturing our love. Back in our daily routine, we continued to prioritize each other, making time for date nights, long walks, and heartfelt conversations. The journey was far from over, but we were committed to facing it together, one step at a time, with a love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. Rediscovering love wasn't a destination, but a continuous journey, and Julia and I were ready to embrace it, knowing that together we could overcome anything. Our renewed connection gave us a sense of stability, but there were still unresolved issues that lingered in the background. The affair had left scars that couldn't be ignored, and we knew that facing the past was essential to truly moving forward. One evening, as we were sitting together after dinner, Julia brought up something we had both been avoiding. "Jack, I think it's time we talk about what happened. Not just the affair, but everything that led up to it." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I knew she was right. "I agree. We've come a long way, but we can't keep ignoring the past." We decided to dedicate the following weekend to a deep, honest conversation about everything. It wasn't going to be easy, but we needed to address the underlying issues that had led to the affair in the first place. When Saturday arrived, we sat down in the living room, ready to face the painful memories. I started by sharing my feelings and experiences from the time leading up to the affair. "I guess I always thought we were happy," I began, "but looking back, I can see that we were drifting apart. I was so focused on work, trying to provide for us, that I didn't realize how distant we'd become. I took you for granted, Julia, and I'm sorry for that." Julia listened intently, tears welling up in her eyes. "I felt lonely, Jack. I didn't know how to tell you that I needed more from you. When Michael showed interest, it filled a void I didn't even know was there. But it was a mistake, a terrible mistake." I nodded, understanding dawning on me. "I'm sorry you felt that way. I should have been more attentive, more present. But we can't change the past. All we can do is learn from it." Julia took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "I betrayed your trust, and I will always regret that. But I want us to be honest with each other, to share our needs and fears, so we never get to that point again." We spent hours talking, unraveling the complexities of our relationship. We discussed the small, seemingly insignificant moments that had added up to create a chasm between us. It was a painful process, but it was also cathartic. We cried, we held each other, and we began to understand each other on a deeper level. One particularly difficult topic was the emotional fallout of the affair. I shared the profound sense of betrayal and hurt I had felt, while Julia expressed her guilt and shame. "I know it's going to take time to fully heal," Julia said, "but I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to rebuild your trust." "I appreciate that, Julia," I replied, "and I want you to know that I'm committed to us as well. We're stronger together, and I believe we can overcome this." By the end of the weekend, we felt a sense of relief. We had faced the past head-on, and while it was painful, it was also necessary. The air between us felt clearer, and our bond felt even stronger. In the weeks that followed, we continued to practice open and honest communication. We set aside time each week to check in with each other, to share our thoughts and feelings. It wasn't always easy, but it was essential to maintaining the progress we had made. One evening, Julia suggested we take a dance class together. "I've always wanted to learn how to dance," she said with a smile, "and I think it would be a fun way for us to connect." I agreed, and we signed up for a local ballroom dancing class. It was something neither of us had ever done before, and the prospect of learning something new together excited us. Our first class was a mix of awkwardness and laughter. We stumbled over our feet, stepped on each other's toes, and laughed until our sides hurt. But as we practiced, we began to find our rhythm, moving in sync, and enjoying the closeness it brought. Dancing became a metaphor for our relationship, a balance of leading and following, of trust and connection. It reminded us of the importance of being in tune with each other, of moving together through the challenges life threw our way. Facing the past had been difficult, but it was a necessary step in our healing journey. It allowed us to let go of the resentment and pain that had held us back, and to embrace a future built on love, trust, and understanding. Julia and I were not just rebuilding our marriage, we were redefining it, creating a new foundation that was stronger and more resilient than before. And as we danced together, both literally and metaphorically, we knew that we were ready to face whatever came our way, together. Just as we were settling into our new rhythm and feeling optimistic about our future, life threw us an unexpected curveball. One evening, as Julia and I were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, she seemed unusually distracted. Her eyes darted around, and she picked at her food absent-mindedly. "Is everything okay?" I asked, concerned by her unusual behavior. Julia hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Jack, there's something I need to tell you. It's been weighing on me, and I can't keep it to myself any longer." My heart pounded in my chest, 1,000 possibilities racing through my mind. "What is it?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us, their weight sinking in slowly. I felt a rush of emotions, shock, joy, fear, all at once. "You're pregnant?" I repeated, trying to process the news. Julia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I found out a few days ago. I didn't know how to tell you. With everything we've been through, I was afraid of how you'd react." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. Julia, this is incredible news. A baby. It's a blessing. I'm just surprised, that's all. Her tears spilled over and she smiled through them. I'm scared, Jack. Scared of how this will affect us, especially after everything we've been through. I squeezed her hand, my own eyes misting over. We've faced so much together already. This is just another challenge, but it's also a beautiful one. We can do this, Julia. We can be great parents. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, our fears and hopes for our child, and how we would navigate this new chapter together. The initial shock gave way to excitement as we imagined the life growing inside her and the family we were about to become. Over the next few weeks, we prepared for the arrival of our baby. We transformed the spare room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft, calming color and filling it with furniture and baby supplies. It felt surreal, but it also brought us even closer as we planned for our future as parents. Our relationship continued to strengthen as we faced the challenges of pregnancy together. We attended doctor's appointments, prenatal classes, and spent countless hours discussing baby names, parenting styles, and our dreams for our child. One evening, as we were putting the finishing touches on the nursery, Julia turned to me with a thoughtful expression. I've been thinking a lot about our journey, about everything we've been through. This baby feels like a new beginning, a fresh start for us. I nodded, understanding what she meant. It does. We've come a long way, and this feels like the culmination of all our hard work and love. As the months passed, Julia's pregnancy progressed smoothly. We celebrated each milestone, from the first ultrasound to the baby's first kicks. Each moment brought us closer, reinforcing our bond and reminding us of the strength we had found in each other. One memorable day, we had our final prenatal class. It was focused on labor and delivery, and we practiced breathing techniques and comfort measures. As we worked together, I felt a surge of pride and love for Julia. She was strong, determined, and ready to face this new challenge head-on. After the class, we took a walk in the park, enjoying the crisp autumn air. Julia's hand rested on her growing belly, and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. I'm so proud of you, I said softly. You're going to be an amazing mother. She leaned into me, her eyes shining with love. And you're going to be an incredible father. I can't wait to start this new chapter with you. As we walked, I thought about how far we had come. The journey had been filled with pain, doubt, and hard work, but it had also been filled with love, growth, and resilience. We had faced our past, rebuilt our trust, and now we were preparing to welcome a new life into our family. The unexpected twist of Julia's pregnancy had brought us even closer, reminding us of the strength of our bond and the depth of our love. We knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but we were ready to face them together, hand in hand, with a love that had been tested and proven unbreakable. As we stood in the park, watching the leaves fall around us, I felt a sense of peace and anticipation. Our journey was far from over, but we were ready for whatever came next, knowing that we had each other and the promise of a beautiful future ahead. As Julia's pregnancy progressed, the reality of becoming parents settled in. The excitement and anticipation were palpable, but so were the fears and uncertainties. We knew that this new chapter would bring challenges we had never faced before, and we wanted to be as prepared as possible. We enrolled in a series of parenting classes that covered everything from newborn care to the emotional aspects of becoming parents. Each class brought new insights and skills, and it was reassuring to know we were taking proactive steps to be the best parents we could be. One weekend, we attended a birthing workshop that focused on the labor and delivery process. The instructor guided us through various techniques to manage pain and stress during labor, and we practiced breathing exercises and different birthing positions. It was intense but also empowering. Julia was determined to have a natural birth if possible, and I wanted to support her in every way I could. We discussed her birth plan in detail, making sure we were on the same page about our preferences and expectations. It was a profound bonding experience, reinforcing our partnership and commitment to each other and our baby. As Julia's due date approached, we spent more time preparing the nursery and organizing baby supplies. We assembled the crib, washed tiny clothes, and stocked up on diapers and other essentials. Each task brought us closer to the reality of having a baby in our home. One evening, we decided to take a break from the preparations and have a quiet date night at home. We cooked a simple dinner together and enjoyed it by candlelight, savoring the moment of calm before the arrival of our baby. "Do you ever think about what kind of parents we'll be?" Julia asked, her voice soft and contemplative. "All the time," I admitted. "I want to be a patient, loving father. I want our child to feel safe and cherished." Julia smiled, her hand resting on her belly. "I want that too. I want to create a home filled with love and laughter, a place where our child can grow and thrive." We spent the evening talking about our hopes and dreams for our baby, sharing our fears and reassuring each other. It was a beautiful, intimate conversation that deepened our connection and reminded us of the love that had brought us together. One night, about 2 weeks before Julia's due date, she woke me up with a gentle nudge. "Jack, I think it's time," she whispered, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. I jumped out of bed, my heart racing. "Are you sure?" She nodded, wincing slightly as another contraction hit. "I'm sure. We need to go to the hospital." We grabbed our hospital bag, which we had packed weeks earlier, and headed to the car. The drive to the hospital felt surreal, a mix of adrenaline and anticipation fueling us both. When we arrived, the staff quickly checked Julia in and got us settled in a labor and delivery room. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I stayed by Julia's side, holding her hand, offering words of encouragement, and helping her through the contractions. She was incredibly strong, her determination shining through every moment. As labor progressed, Julia's pain intensified, and I felt a deep admiration for her resilience. The birthing team was supportive, guiding us through each stage and offering reassurance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the moment we had been waiting for arrived. With one final push, our baby entered the world, filling the room with a powerful, life-affirming cry. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at our child, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the moment. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, placing our son on Julia's chest. She cradled him, her face radiant with love and exhaustion. "Welcome to the world, little one," I whispered, leaning in to kiss his tiny forehead. "We've been waiting for you." In that instant, everything changed. The journey we had been on, the struggles and triumphs, had all led to this beautiful, miraculous moment. Our son was here, and we were a family. The days following our son's birth were a blur of joy, exhaustion, and adjustment. We brought him home, introducing him to the nursery we had lovingly prepared. Every moment was a new discovery, a new challenge, and a new joy. As we settled into our roles as parents, Julia and I found that our bond continued to grow stronger. The love we had rediscovered was now enriched by the love we had for our child. We navigated sleepless nights, diaper changes, and feedings together, finding a rhythm and support in each other. One evening as we sat together, our son sleeping peacefully in my arms, Julia looked at me with a serene smile. "We did it, Jack. We made it through everything, and now we have this beautiful family." I nodded, my heart full. "Yes, we did, and I wouldn't want to be on this journey with anyone else." Our journey had been filled with trials and triumphs, but through it all, our love had endured and deepened. As we looked at our son, we knew that our story was just beginning, and we were ready to face whatever came next, together as a family. Our transition into parenthood was a whirlwind of late-night feedings, diaper changes, and a profound sense of love and responsibility. We had settled into a routine, and although it was exhausting, it was also deeply rewarding. Our son, whom we named Ethan, brought so much joy into our lives. However, just as we were finding our footing, life threw us another curveball. One afternoon, as I was at work, I received a call from Julia. Her voice was trembling, and I could tell something was terribly wrong. "Jack, it's Ethan. He's not well. He's been crying nonstop and he's burning up with a fever. I'm taking him to the hospital," she said, her voice laced with panic. My heart sank, and I immediately dropped everything, rushing to the hospital to meet them. The drive felt interminable, my mind racing with worry. When I arrived, I found Julia in the emergency room holding Ethan, who looked pale and listless. The doctors quickly took Ethan in for examination, and we were left in the waiting area, anxiety gnawing at us. Julia was beside herself with worry, and I tried my best to reassure her, though I was just as scared. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor approached us. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, we need to run some tests to determine what's causing Ethan's fever and discomfort. It could be an infection or something more serious. Well, keep you updated as soon as we know more," The uncertainty was agonizing. We sat in the sterile hospital room, holding each other, praying for our little boy. Every minute felt like an hour as we waited for news. Finally, the doctor returned with an update. We've identified a bacterial infection. It's serious, but we caught it early. Ethan will need to stay in the hospital for treatment, but we're optimistic about his recovery. Relief washed over us, though the thought of our tiny baby battling an infection was still terrifying. Ethan was admitted to the pediatric ward, and we took turns staying by his side, offering comfort and love as he received the necessary treatment. The days in the hospital were some of the hardest we had ever faced. Watching Ethan, so small and vulnerable, hooked up to monitors and IVs, was heart-wrenching. But through it all, we found strength in each other and in our love for our son. One evening, as I was sitting by Ethan's bedside, Julia joined me, her eyes tired but determined. "Jack, I've been thinking. We've faced so many challenges already, and we've always come out stronger. This is another test, but I know we can get through it." I nodded, taking her hand. "We've got each other, and we've got Ethan. We'll get through this too. He's a fighter, just like his parents." Over the next week, Ethan's condition gradually improved. The antibiotics started to work, and his fever came down. The color returned to his cheeks, and his cries became less frequent. Each small improvement felt like a monumental victory. When the doctors finally told us that Ethan was well enough to go home, we were overjoyed. We thanked the medical staff profusely and took our precious boy home, grateful beyond words. Back home, we resumed our routine, but the experience had changed us. We were more vigilant, more appreciative of each moment we had with Ethan. The scare had reminded us of how fragile life could be and how important it was to cherish every second. One evening, after we had put Ethan to bed, Julia and I sat together, reflecting on the ordeal. "You know, Jack, if this experience has taught me anything, it's that we're capable of handling whatever life throws at us. We're stronger than we think." I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her strength and resilience. "You're right. We've faced so much together, and we've always come out the other side. I'm proud of us, Julia, and I'm proud of Ethan. He's a little warrior." As we sat there, I realized that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, but I knew that we could face them together. The unexpected challenge of Ethan's illness had tested us in ways we hadn't anticipated, but it had also reaffirmed our love and commitment to each other and to our son. Life was unpredictable, and we couldn't control everything that came our way, but as long as we had each other, we could handle anything. Together, we were unstoppable, ready to face whatever the future held, one day at a time. With Ethan's health scare behind us, Julia and I settled into a new normal. Our journey had taught us to appreciate the small moments and to cherish the time we had together as a family. We had faced significant challenges and come out stronger, and now we were ready to embrace a new beginning. One evening, as we sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Julia turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Jack, I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what we want for ourselves and for Ethan." I nodded, curious to hear her thoughts. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting the colors of the setting sun. "I love our life here, but I think it's time for a change. I want to move somewhere new, start fresh, somewhere we can build a new life for ourselves and for Ethan." The idea intrigued me. We had spent so much time rebuilding our relationship and navigating the challenges of parenthood, and a fresh start sounded like the perfect way to continue our journey. "Where do you have in mind?" Julia smiled, her excitement evident. "I've been looking into some places, and I think a small town in the countryside would be perfect. A place where we can raise Ethan in a safe, nurturing environment, surrounded by nature and community." The more we talked about it, the more excited we became. The idea of a fresh start in a new place filled us with hope and anticipation. We spent the next few weeks researching towns, visiting potential homes, and planning our move. One weekend, we took a trip to a charming town nestled in the countryside. The rolling hills, friendly neighbors, and quaint shops made us feel at home immediately. We found a beautiful house with a large yard, perfect for Ethan to play and grow. It felt like the perfect place to start our new chapter. As we stood in front of the house, imagining our future there, Julia took my hand. "This feels right, Jack. This feels like where we're meant to be." I squeezed her hand, feeling a sense of peace and excitement. I think so too. Let's do it. Let's make this our new beginning. The move itself was a whirlwind of packing, saying goodbye to friends, and preparing for our new life. It was bittersweet, leaving behind the place where we had experienced so much, but the promise of a fresh start filled us with hope. Once we settled into our new home, we quickly adapted to our new surroundings. The community welcomed us with open arms, and we found ourselves making new friends and building new routines. Ethan thrived in the new environment, his laughter echoing through the house as he explored the yard and made friends at the local park. One of the highlights of our new life was the local farmers market, a bustling hub of activity where we could buy fresh produce and handmade goods. Julia, with her passion for fresh local food, loved the market, and it quickly became a weekend tradition for our family. One Saturday morning, as we strolled through the market, Julia stopped at a stand selling homemade jams and preserves. The vendor, a friendly woman named Martha, struck up a conversation with Julia, and they instantly connected over their shared love of cooking. "Have you ever thought about selling your own products at the market?" Martha asked, noticing Julia's enthusiasm. Julia's eyes lit up. "I haven't, but it sounds like a wonderful idea. I've always loved cooking and sharing my creations." Over the next few months, Julia started her own stand at the market, selling homemade jams, preserves, and baked goods. It was a labor of love, and the community quickly embraced her delicious creations. Her stand became a popular spot, and she found joy and fulfillment in sharing her passion with others. Meanwhile, I found a job at a local construction company where I could put my skills to use and contribute to the community. The work was rewarding, and I enjoyed the camaraderie with my new colleagues. Our new life was everything we had hoped for, and more. The challenges we had faced had brought us closer together, and now we were reaping the rewards of our hard work and resilience. We had found a place where we could thrive, both as individuals and as a family. One evening, as we sat on our porch watching Ethan play in the yard, Julia turned to me with a contented smile. "This is exactly what I imagined, Jack. A new beginning, a new life. I'm so grateful for everything we've been through, because it led us here." I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and love. "Me too, Julia. We've come a long way, and I wouldn't change a thing. Here's to our new beginning, and to all the adventures that lie ahead." As we watched the sunset, the colors painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knew that we were exactly where we were meant to be. Our journey had been filled with ups and downs, but it had brought us to this beautiful moment, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held for our family. Our new life in the countryside was everything we had hoped for. The fresh start rejuvenated us, and we quickly became a part of the close-knit community. Julia's market stand flourished, and my work was fulfilling. Ethan was thriving, growing stronger and happier every day. But just as we were beginning to feel settled, a new test of trust emerged. One afternoon, as Julia was preparing for the market, a man approached her stand. He was tall, with rugged good looks and a friendly demeanor. He introduced himself as Daniel, a local farmer who had recently started selling his produce at the market. "I've heard a lot about your jams and preserves," Daniel said with a warm smile. "I'd love to try them." Julia blushed slightly, flattered by the attention. "Thank you, Daniel. It's always nice to meet new people in the market." Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a regular at Julia's stand. He would stop by to chat, compliment her creations, and offer her fresh produce from his farm. At first, I thought nothing of it. Julia had always been friendly and outgoing, and it was natural for her to make new friends at the market. However, as time went on, I couldn't help but notice the growing familiarity between them. They would laugh and talk for longer periods, and Daniel's visits became more frequent. I tried to push my doubts aside, reminding myself of the trust we had rebuilt and the love we shared. One evening, after a particularly busy day at the market, Julia seemed distracted. We were sitting on the porch enjoying a quiet moment when she finally spoke up. "Jack, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice hesitant. I turned to her, my heart pounding. "What is it?" "It's about Daniel," she began, avoiding my gaze. "He's been very friendly and I enjoy our conversations, but lately I've been feeling confused." "Confused?" I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes," she admitted, her eyes finally meeting mine. "I care about you and our family more than anything, but I can't deny that I'm drawn to him. It's been bothering me, and I needed to be honest with you." A wave of emotions crashed over me: hurt, anger, fear. But beneath it all, there was a determination to face this head on, just as we had faced every other challenge together. "Thank you for being honest, Julia," I said, my voice tight. "I appreciate it, but we need to figure out what this means for us and how we can move forward." Julia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't want to lose what we have, Jack. I love you, and I want to work through this." Over the next few days, we had many difficult conversations. We talked about our fears, our insecurities, and the impact Daniel's presence had on our relationship. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We decided to seek counseling, something we hadn't done since we first rebuilt our relationship. The counselor helped us navigate our feelings, providing a safe space to express our concerns and find ways to strengthen our bond. One of the counselor's suggestions was to set boundaries with Daniel. Julia agreed to limit her interactions with him and to be mindful of our feelings. It was a challenging step, but it was crucial for rebuilding trust. As we worked through this new test, I realized how much we had grown. The trust we had rebuilt over the years wasn't easily shaken. We were stronger now, more resilient. We had faced so much together, and this was just another obstacle we could overcome. Slowly, things began to improve. Julia honored the boundaries we set, and our communication became more open and honest. We focused on spending quality time together, reconnecting as a couple and as a family. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Julia took my hand. "Jack, I know this has been hard, but I'm so grateful for your support and understanding. I love you more than ever, and I'm committed to our future." I squeezed her hand, feeling a deep sense of relief and love. "I love you too, Julia. We've faced so much together, and we'll face whatever comes next. We're stronger together." As we watched the sky darken, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, but we were ready to face them together. Our love had been tested and proven resilient, and I was confident that we could overcome anything as long as we had each other. After our counseling sessions, the tension that had settled between us began to lift. We made a conscious effort to reconnect, not just as parents, but as partners. We realized that we needed to nourish our relationship, to find time for each other amidst the demands of work and parenthood. One weekend, we decided to take a trip to the coast, leaving Ethan with my parents for a couple of days. It was our first getaway since Ethan was born, and we were both excited and nervous about leaving him. But we knew it was important for us to have this time alone. The drive to the coast was filled with easy conversation and laughter, a reminder of the early days of our relationship. We arrived at a quaint bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean, the salty air and sound of the waves instantly soothing our spirits. That evening, we had dinner at a small seaside restaurant. The ambiance was romantic, with candlelit tables and a view of the moonlit water. As we enjoyed our meal, we talked about our hopes and dreams, about the journey we had been on and the future we envisioned. "I've missed this," Julia said softly, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I've missed us." "Me too," I admitted, feeling a warmth in my chest. "It feels good to be here with you, to have this time together." After dinner, we walked along the beach, the sand cool beneath our feet. We talked about the challenges we had faced, the lessons we had learned, and how grateful we were for each other. The intimacy of the moment, the openness of our conversation, brought us closer than we had been in a long time. Back at the bed and breakfast, we sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the waves crash against the shore. The silence between us was comfortable, filled with a sense of peace and understanding. "Jack," Julia said after a while, her voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what I want for us. I want to make sure we always prioritize our relationship, no matter what life throws at us." I nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. "I feel the same way. We've been through so much, and I don't want to lose sight of what's important. You, me, and Ethan. We're a team, and we need to keep that at the forefront." The next morning, we woke up early to watch the sunrise. The sky transformed from deep purple to a brilliant orange, the sun slowly emerging from the horizon. It felt like a metaphor for our own journey, a new beginning, filled with hope and promise. We returned home from the trip feeling rejuvenated and more connected. The experience had reminded us of the importance of nurturing our relationship and making time for each other. It was a lesson we carried with us as we resumed our daily lives. Back in our routine, we implemented small changes to keep the spark alive. We scheduled regular date nights, even if they were just quiet evenings at home after Ethan went to bed. We made a point to communicate more openly, to share our thoughts and feelings without hesitation. Julia continued to thrive with her market stand, and I supported her every step of the way. Her confidence and passion were inspiring, and I loved seeing her light up as she talked about her creations and her interactions with customers. Meanwhile, I found joy in my work and in being a father to Ethan. Watching him grow, seeing the world through his innocent eyes, was a daily reminder of the beauty and simplicity of life. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Ethan play in the yard, Julia turned to me with a smile. "You know, Jack, I think we've come a long way. We've faced so many challenges, but we've always found our way back to each other." I wrapped my arm around her, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "We have, and I'm so grateful for that. For you, for Ethan, for everything we've built together." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over our home, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, more tests of our resilience and love. But I was confident that we could face them together, as long as we continued to prioritize each other and our family. We had come through the darkness and found our way back to the light. And as long as we had each other, I knew that we could handle anything life threw our way. Together, we were unstoppable, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Time has a way of passing quickly when life is filled with love, laughter, and the simple joys of family. Months turned into years, and Ethan grew from a curious toddler into an energetic and bright young boy. Our lives settled into a comfortable rhythm, and the wounds of the past seemed like distant memories. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves turned brilliant shades of red and gold, Julia and I decided to take Ethan to the park. It was one of those perfect days where the air was crisp, the sky clear, and the sun warm. We packed a picnic and spent the day playing, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. As we sat on a blanket, watching Ethan chase after a soccer ball, Julia turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Jack, do you remember when we first moved here? How we talked about building a life together, no matter what?" I smiled, recalling the early days of our new beginning. "Of course I do. It was a promise we made to each other, and I think we've done a pretty good job keeping it." Julia nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "We have, and I've been thinking a lot about how far we've come, how much we've grown. I'm so grateful for our journey, for everything we've learned along the way." I reached for her hand, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and love. "Me too, Julia. We've faced so many challenges, but we've always come out stronger. I couldn't have asked for a better partner, a better life." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Ethan play. The sight of him, so full of life and happiness, filled my heart with a profound sense of contentment. I knew that no matter what the future held, as long as we had each other, we would be okay. That evening, after putting Ethan to bed, Julia and I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot cocoa. The air was cool, and the stars twinkled brightly in the night sky. It was one of those moments where everything felt right, where the world seemed to be in perfect harmony. "Jack," Julia said softly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about our future, about how we can continue to grow, to support each other, to keep our love strong." I turned to her, my curiosity piqued. "What do you have in mind?" She smiled, a hint of excitement in her eyes. "I want to renew our vows, to reaffirm our commitment to each other, to celebrate our love and everything we've built together." The idea filled me with joy. It was the perfect way to honor our journey, to acknowledge the challenges we had faced and the strength of our bond. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Julia. Let's do it." We spent the next few weeks planning a small, intimate ceremony. We wanted it to be a reflection of our love, our resilience, and our gratitude for each other. We invited our closest friends and family, those who had supported us through thick and thin. The day of the ceremony was perfect. The sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the fields where we had set up a simple, beautiful arch adorned with flowers. Ethan, dressed in a tiny suit, served as our ring bearer, his excitement adding to the joy of the occasion. As Julia walked down the makeshift aisle, her eyes locked on mine, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of love and gratitude. She was more than my wife. She was my partner, my confidant, my rock. Every step she took was a testament to our journey, to the strength of our love. When she reached me, we took each other's hands, our eyes brimming with tears. The officiant began the ceremony, but it was our vows that made the moment truly special. Julia, I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling within me. From the moment I met you, I knew you were special. We faced so much together, and through it all, my love for you has only grown stronger. Today I promise to continue loving you, supporting you, and growing with you, no matter what the future holds. You are my heart, my home, my everything. Julia's eyes glistened with tears as she spoke her vows. Jack, you are my best friend, my partner, my love. We've been through so much, and every challenge has brought us closer together. I promise to stand by your side, to love you unconditionally, and to cherish every moment we have together. You are my rock, my safe place, my forever. With those words, we exchanged rings, a symbol of our renewed commitment to each other. As we kissed, sealing our vows, I felt a profound sense of peace and happiness. This was our promise renewed, a testament to our love and resilience. The celebration that followed was filled with laughter, joy, and a sense of togetherness. Our friends and family shared stories, toasted to our future, and celebrated the love that had brought us through the darkest times. As the evening came to a close, Julia and I stood together, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. "We've come so far," she whispered, her head resting on my shoulder. "We have," I agreed, wrapping my arm around her, "and I can't wait to see where our journey takes us next." In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our love was strong, our bond unbreakable, and as long as we had each other, I knew that we could handle anything life threw our way.